I'd like to call the Groseville Airport Commerce Park Commission to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Filarski, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 is roll call. Mr. Moran is here. Mr. Athel is on his way. Mr. Van Oz?
Here.
Mr. Tenova? Here. Mr. Mans is excused. Mr. Hornby? Here. Mr. Filarski? Item number 3 is any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Or by Mr. Tenova. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 21, 2020.
Move to approve.
Van Oz, supported by Mr. Filarski. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 5 is our financial report for January 2020. Everyone should have a copy of their financial report. Our budgeted revenue for the year is $887,035. Our year-to-date revenue is $765,936, which equals 86% of our budget. Our expenditures are budgeted at $887,035, and our year-to-date encumbrances and expenditures are $1,329,432, which equals 150% of our budgeted expenditures. Our capital reserves as of the end of January are $13,912. I'm sorry, $238,770. Our fuel inventory is $13,912 of Jet A and $22,064 of 100 low level or 100
low lead.
Our past due rent summary as of February 6th is $2,511. With that, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few. We're working on, the township is going to be moving some money in from the Building 63 project, I think, in the coming months as taxes come in. But we were talking about trying to get real year-to-date expenditures removed. Right now, the township has given us, while waiting for tax monies to come in for the loan stuff, they've given us $200,000 into our account so far. We're owed another $500,000. So if you were to run that into the expenditures, that puts us at $824,432. And I'm sorry I didn't get that in your sheet. I didn't get those numbers updated till today. So that's what we've got, which is like a $58,000 spread so far between revenue and expenditure. So we're tracking along very nicely. You know, the capital reserves, according to that, should be sitting around $700,000. But we still are going to have some expenses coming out from our share of that project, which is a few $100,000. So once that comes out, we should be sitting around $500,000 in capital reserves. But I think as we close out the fiscal year, the finalized numbers will be kind of become a little more crystal clear on the exact dollar amounts. But those are kind of the rough oversight of what's going on right now. And in terms of the past due rent summary, I think that's the lowest I've had it in a few years. So the Deacon will get paid off. Marshall we're just going to write off, and then the Tomasik's on a payment plan. But Russman and Marshall will probably just write off at this point. I mean, those are the full amounts owed. I'll look at those again before the end of the year. I don't think those are going to be collectible. But
When you say end of the year, end of the fiscal year?
End of fiscal year, correct, by April 1. And you're looking at $1,300 total between the two. So.
Mr. Rathel.
So, sorry, Mike, I didn't know you were going to go on from our capital reserves, but so you just got the numbers from Ann today that you just reviewed with us?
Late in the day today, yeah.
You make the changes or put notations on this report and get this to us tomorrow so that we have a record of that, even though that they won't be fully transferred until the end of March, right? But if we could on this report, get that noted and have those numbers, in this report, even if you have to footnote them, whatever you have to do,
Sure.
but,
It'll be this week. I'm gonna be out of the office tomorrow for a conference and stuff, but I will get those, the numbers up.
yeah, that's fine, but, this part of our financial report, this isn't part of our financial report, is it?
Yes.
It is?
Yep.
I don't wanna, I wouldn't be a favor of approving this right now without that, because the accounting that we have here isn't the way that it was set up and originally thought of by the commission. So it's gonna rectify itself, but I wanna make sure that everyone is aware as today how it's going to rectify itself.
Sure.
Instead of just saying, well, it's gonna, at the end of the year, it'll all happen.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair,
Van Oz.
we made a couple of big changes with our loans right towards the end. And the reason a transfer hasn't been done before is it put pretty heavy stress on our general fund budget. And so those funds that were not transferred were based into the general fund. The general fund gets reimbursed once a year. That'll come at the end of March when we set that aside. So the reason those numbers are not there now is because the township is utilizing those funds to balance out the general fund. And the only reason we did that is because we made a couple of changes right in the middle of the loan process where we borrowed 300, then 600, and then another 150. And it just put some stress on the general fund balance. And we only get paid once a year, so that's the reason for the delay.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I spoke with Ann and, to make those changes, I don't have an issue with, and I understand how it all works, and we understand how it works, but if we're not here, then maybe someone else that comes in behind us doesn't know how it works, but right now, the money's not at the airport. So I just want in our records, the official approved financial records that this body approves, that it's noted, that it's not in there, that it's owed because it's a different scenario than what we had planned for, which is, again, fine, like Ted just said. I don't have a problem with it, but it's taken out, and there's no notation here whatsoever other than we don't have the money anymore.
Is that by way of a motion, Mr. Rathel? To
well-
approve this, the January financial report with the addition of the footnotes that Mike's gonna add as it relates to the,
Ted, are you okay with
expenditures
that?
of
Those
encumbrances.
footnotes on
I
there?
would just soon approve it, but if you don't want to approve it, that's okay. It's up to you.
I mean, with those footnotes.
Sure. Problem.
I'm not gonna vote for it unless we know that we're getting the money and when.
well, I need a motion. Somebody wanna make a motion? January 2020 budget with the addition of the footnote that explains why the expenditures are at $1,729,432 with an explanation of that transfer of the funds.
And why our capital reserve account is only at $238,000.
Yeah, I'm assuming that footnote will cover both of those two
Right,
items.
right.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Flarsky,
Second.
support by Mr. Rathel. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6 is the manager's report. Item 6A is the budget review presentation, our capital improvement lists. Mike?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I may be a little out of order here. Do you want to do that with the action item, or do you want me to do that first? Then we'll go through the rest of the manager's report, just organization, whatever you'd like to do is fine.
That's on the agenda. Let's do it.
All right, so our presentation for our 2020-2021 fiscal year proposed budget. I'm going to walk through. I guess I'll start off by saying this year's kind of an oddball year for our budget. We have a lot of moving parts, a lot of potentials, a lot of one-time expenses. So it's kind of, the numbers are actually kind of in line with previous years and some increases, and we did move a few things around I'll go over, but this year is, I'm going to kind of describe it as a transition year, and then next year, once we get some repayment to the township done, I think we'll start seeing the benefits of our new revenue streams coming in for us. Quick couple of bullet points on an overview. It anticipates revenue from Building 63 as a storage operation. I budgeted $30,000 in there. We're at $43,000 and change so far. I'm sorry, $46,000 and change so far. So I probably should have bumped that up a little, but we can look at that as well. I'm sorry, that'd be Building 61, 62 because we moved that in there this year. So that assumes that's still operating as a storage facility. And anticipates us operating an FBO, fixed-based operator, for the fiscal year because we have not found anyone else to run that yet. We're basically doing a bare minimum services.
So the anticipated revenue from Building 63, or is that supposed to be building?
61, 62 for storage, yes, correct. The revenue from...
Not 63, because
Correct.
that's the building that we just did all our...
Correct. Yep, correct. Anticipates no rental increases for hangars, assumes no revenue from the tennis center or the 2 additional new units in Building 63. We probably could budget something there. I'm pretty confident we're going to get those leased out, but I'm a fairly, as you guys are aware, conservative in my budgeting, and I really budget for what I truly have now. So again, there's a lot of potential upsides in our revenue streams, but I'm being as conservative as I can be. So again, it assumes no revenue from the tennis center, and no additional revenue for the 2 units, which will be roughly about $1,300 a month when they're leased out. It assumes no revenue from our potential storage expansion that is on your agenda tonight. So that additional land lease, if it were to come to fruition, is not built into this budget at all, because that wouldn't be, I think, a safe bet at this point. As you guys are aware, most rental increases, we have a couple different types of leases. Most of them are based on a consumer price index. I believe it was 1.3% this year, and it's kind of in the Metro Detroit area. Other leases are negotiated where they're scheduled increases, 2-3% a year. Most, I'd say 80 to 90% of our leases at this point are on CPI increases annually. Sometimes our new developments have a 2 or 3 year freeze if they're putting a lot of capital improvements into the project. Just depends on how the deals are negotiated. Expenses are all budgeted based upon previous year trends and year-to-date actuals. So we look at, I'm provided all that by our finance department, and I look at all those. Employee costs and benefits are also provided by accounting and plugged in there. So the one change you'll see this year, the finance department asked me to, and it's not really an issue, it's just moving money from one cost center to another, is the 2 part-time FBO employees were spread across our 3 cost centers are Fuel Farm, Airport, and Commerce Park. The part-time employees were spread across all 3. Finance wanted to move them all into just one account where they mainly are based, being the Fuel Farm. A little bit could be on the airport, but it's mostly fuel services and plane services. Not really, I mean, we're all really one account. It's just spreading it over the accounting and the 3 cost centers. So we'll see those differences as we go through as well. So we do have to go into retained earnings for this. You'll see that a little further in. The summary basically is that we took the 1-year loan for $160,000 for the 2 additional units that we have are building with the township. So we owe that to them within 1 year, the $160,000 plus the $30,000 for the runway build out that we did. So we essentially owe the township a $200,000 loan note this year plus some interest costs. So you'll see it's kind of a high year in terms of getting that out of the way. And again, we've lost a little bit of revenue, so we have to dip into the retained earnings to pay for these capital expenditures. I guess to make the differentiation, we're not really dipping into them for an operating procedure. We're dipping in for this capital improvement project that we've done. So I think that's an important note to make, that if you want to look at just the operations of the airport, Commerce Park, and Fuel Farm, everything's sustainable. We're really just continuing our investment into the new build-out in Building 63. So I'll kind of skim through these, make notes along the way. Stop me if you have any questions Revenue, fuel farm, I've had the same pretty much every year since I've been here. I mean, it's really kind of a cash in, cash out account. We have a standard markup. We collect sales tax and expense that in and out. So if we sell more fuel, our expenses go up because we're buying more fuel and we're paying more taxes. It's really kind of just a pass-through account. Airfield revenues, you see that's up slightly, 1.23%. That's a combination of that CPI increases and negotiated increases. Commerce Park revenues are up 81,709. What you're seeing there is that's a blend when we get into it, but basically it's a blend of our new 8 units in Building 63, which really total a little over $120,000. But we're assuming no revenue for the tennis center, which is a reduction of $50,000. So that's kind of that cost difference you're seeing there. There's some minor changes as well, but airfield ops, those are expenses. That's down slightly, and that's because we moved some of the employees into the fuel farm, which is why you kind of see those percentages go up somewhat similar. And Commerce Park ops is up slightly because that's the loan repayment back to the township. So you'll see that as we go through those individual accounts. But overall, you can see, I mean, we're talking about a 1.13% increase over last year's budget. Last year's budget, we had some stuff coming out for capital-intensive projects and things. So pretty similar year to last year in terms of retained earnings for capital improvements and operating costs. And here's kind of a graphical representation of this year's proposed budget. All right, fuel farm expense. This is where you start to see that change I mentioned with the finance department earlier on. The part-time goes up $19,300. We basically moved both part-time employees into that and then moved the full-time employee stuff out, which is why you see the vision insurance, dental, Section 125, all that stuff coming down. Credit card fees, professional services are some of the maintenance items that we do along the way. The one thing I'll show you on the next page, again, gas and oil, $130,000. That's really, if our revenues go up, our expenses go up, so it's just kind of a pass-through at that point. Maintenance building, this is one capital improvement project I'm proposing for next year. They're going to discontinue servicing and supporting our fuel terminal out there. It's about 9 years old now, which I don't think is that old, but the company is one of the few games in town, and they're discontinuing that M3000 model. So we're going to have to purchase a new system out there to accept credit card payments, and that module is $14,745. There's some benefits. It's a little more weather tight. This machine is probably down a few times a year for bugs and weather issues that we've had to fix. And the parts are getting old. I know I just had to call them, and they only had 1 or 2 of the parts in stock. So that does have to get replaced. We don't really have much of a choice on that expense. We could go with a different vendor, but I think the prices are comparable.
Mike, what's the useful life of that?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I think the system is probably fine for 10 to 15 years, but again, after 7, they've announced, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, we might have purchased, I wasn't here at the time of this purchase, but we might have purchased that halfway through the product cycle, right? If they designed the product for 15 years and we bought it at year 9, then I guess you're getting only that lifespan. But the good news is with the new system, the 4000 that we're purchasing, I mean, it's brand new out this year, so I'm hoping that they're already doing some installs. They'll work the kinks out, and we can get, you know, an updated model in the summer. But I couldn't tell you the lifespan of you know, that they advertise or anything like that off the top of my head. Here is a historical graph from 2017-18 fiscal year to current. When you see the 1920, that's year to date. So this was pulled several weeks ago. You know, so obviously that's the reason you're going to see 19 and 20 being lower on all these graphs is because that fiscal year isn't closed out yet. That's showing you what the true numbers are for this year so far. And then 2021 is what I'm proposing for the budget.
Mike, is that just because of the employees, just being totally accounted for in the fuel farm?
Correct.
And also the almost $15,000 expense?
Correct.
Take those out, which is a normal scenario, then we're basically a balance. The fuel farm doesn't make money, doesn't lose money. It's
Right.
just
It
a
normally
service.
makes a little, not a lot. Commerce Park revenues, again, pretty stable, and then you'll see some of the increases from our new units. Rent income on the buildings there, and the yards, those are our storage yards and property, I'm sorry, the 668-000 account, 0.92% increase, very stable. Again, that's CPI blended with some negotiated leases. So that's why you don't always see it at 1.3%, which was the CPI for this year. Rent income for the buildings, again, this is where you see the tennis center being removed. It also assumes no income for building 61, 62. We are going to have a few months of income from, I believe it's till June, from U.S. Fish and Wildlife being in the front offices of that building at $7,000 a month. So we will see a little bit of that. I didn't budget that in there because it was kind of unknown what was going to be going on, but they did commit to a 3-month extension on the lease. So we'll probably have a little bit of fluff in there. But then again, the tennis center is also removed, which is roughly $50,000. And then under that, you'll see our 8 new tenants in Building 63. That starts with the Chris Clinton name and goes down to Compo Brothers. You can kind of see every unit's roughly $15,000 to $16,000, and then D-Ball, the sailmaker that was here on the east side of Hangar 1 and moved over there, took a double unit, so that's why you see that number at $27,600.
Why are we not putting any revenue for 61, 62? We have storage.
It's above it, sorry. There's two 6162s. I do not know why. I'm sorry. The storage is in there. Building 6162 storage at $30,000. I apologize if I misspoke on that.
So, yeah, I mean, we do have revenue.
Correct,
and
correct.
that
It's
is-
shown.
And that's just a budgeted revenue
Right,
because we basically profit share, right?
right.
That
I
it could-
apologize. That is built into this budget. Yeah, yeah. The $30,000 from storage, but then I was saying the additional few months at $7,000 for Fish and Wildlife in the offices.
So basically, we could say 61, 62 front office.
Right. I didn't budget anything for that, but correct.
And we're estimating $30,000
$30,000.
revenue of profit sharing for the.
Right. Commerce Park expenses. This is where you see the part-time stuff go down. The salaries, some of it got moved into the airport, so you'll see that stuff jump there. Everything else pretty standard on this page. Maintenance and repairs unchanged. That $7,500 number seems to be pretty stable for us. We trimmed the promoting and marketing stuff, and Ron, I don't know if you want me to touch on that now, or I guess on that point we're going to have to revisit moving forward with promoting and marketing. Some of you may or may not have heard, but Angela Secokis has given her notice to I think it's a 30-day notice to the township that she's going to be resigning and took a new job. So congrats to her. We'll try to tie up some loose ends moving forward, and I think I'm going to sit down and reconsider if we want to go back and look for a part-time marketing individual again, or if we want to scale some of that back. So I think that's a conversation we can have in-house here moving forward. Maintenance building, you'll see that number dropped by $30,000. That was basically budgeted for the tennis center roof replacement. Obviously, we have some things in motion there, plus the insurance claim. So I pulled that out. That's just general maintenance for the rest of the facilities. And then here's where you start to see some of the repayments back to the general fund loan there. You can see the $860,000 at 3.5%. So that's the full loan that was taken. We agreed, or the township agreed with us to give us $160 on a 1-year note, and then the rest of the $700,000 picks up after that. So that's where you see the $160,000 coming back to the principal mortgage. Principal payment for the general fund loan, and then below that's the $30,000 expense payment.
So we just have $40,800 budgeted for the $180,000 loan.
No, that's the difference from last year. $160,000's the payment, and the $40,000 was the principal one that matured last year, right? That's the difference.
119. So we're.
I'm sorry, that's last year's expense.
Right.
So
So we're budgeting this year 160, but that's not just 100 and. Oh, okay, because you added them together, the 700 and the 160. Okay, I got you.
All right, so
okay.
the 160 is
yep,
coming
yep.
out this year, and then next year we'll pick up at the $700,000 rate.
Yep.
So, again, showing you that this budget, you can see here we're going, I show it on the revenue side, going into prior resources for about $70,000. So we're going to have almost $200,000 paid to the township this year back to their
Yep.
loan, interest expense, and stuff. Next year, that $160,000 goes to $50,000. on the $700,000 loan.
That's exactly
So
what we
the
wanted.
50,000
Yep.
and plus the 30,000 of the runway equals, I'm sorry, what our previous bond payment was. That was the
Yep,
goal. and that's-
$80,000.
Right, it'd
So
be
that's-
exactly 80,000. So we'll be, that difference is basically what we're going into our retained earnings for, you know, plus some of the capital stuff we're doing, so. Here's a graph of the Commerce Park revenue and expenditures. Obviously, the 1920s, because that, what you see on your financials today isn't really allocated yet or reallocated back to us, so I can't show you the true expenditure side there, but we'll have that updated. Airfield revenues, you'll see the 668-300, the east side of Hangar 1 D-ball. That's obviously where we shifted D-ball from the east side of Hangar 1 facility to his new double unit in Building 63. So, you know, that was $36,000 a year. So the airport side of this budget took a hit with that. But obviously we're not budgeting for any revenue for that. I'm hoping we can at least get a partial tenant in there and generate something. The office leases are down slightly. You'll see that $2,000 decrease. We lost one tenant, so I need to get back on advertising a few of our available spaces over there in Hangar 2. It's definitely a goal for me at the beginning of the year. And then this is where you see the other half of the $70,826 going into retained earnings. I just split that between the airfield and the Commerce Park to make the payments back to the township. The miscellaneous income, $8,000. Again, those are our weddings, our photo shoots. We've done $25,000 so far this year. I just keep that low. We basically have about $8,000 of weddings booked so far for this coming summer, that being 3 weddings. So, you know, that's kind of our, I'll call it our fun money account. You know, it could go to 30 grand, it could go 8, but it's been averaging in the 20s normally. On to airfield expenses. This is where you see the increases for full-time regular employee, part-time go down, and some of the overtime stuff go up. So we move some of the full-time stuff here and move the part-time stuff back onto the fuel farm. This is kind of the flip side of that. Other than that, everything else is pretty standard. Nothing too crazy increasing on retirement or anything like that. Admin expenses, that's our fee to the Township Financial Department plus their employee. So that's where you see that coming out. Everything else is standard there. The one thing I'm going to look at, I mentioned this in our budget meeting. I mean, our insurance tab this year is a little over $60,000. I think I noticed like there's one vehicle that I'm getting ready to offload that could be removed from the list and start. I'm going to really take a close look at that list for cost savings to see how we work that down. I'll have a conversation with our insurance provider to see any reductions we can do there, kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, some of our older equipment is valued high. I don't know if it makes a difference to lower them down or if there wasn't, a loss with the vehicle, if they're really going to pay out the value that we're insuring it for. I want to make sure of that, or we need to lower it down. So I'm going to take a look at that, and I can report back on any cost savings we're able to find in there. But that's a pretty big portion of our budget just for insurance. So other than that, maintenance to T-hangers on this one, you see that drop significantly. That's because we did the roof coating this previous year for a little over $30,000. I'm sorry, $42,000. And now we're just going back to the normal maintenance stuff. We don't have any other plans for the T-hangers in this fiscal year. The only other capital improvement projects going down the road, we moved, well, there's 2 on this page, the design for taxiway east construction and lighting. A few years down the road, we are planning with MDOT to look at reconstructing our oldest pavement, which dates back to 1998. That's our taxiway Alpha that runs east and west. To go from our new runway to our center runway of taxiway, our center taxiway of taxiway Charlie. We're not going to do that till over to 1735 because the runway continues to deteriorate and we haven't had a clear direction yet from FAA on what's going to happen with that runway. So at this time, I'm not planning on redoing that unless we're going to have a reconstruction on 1735. That'd just be wasted funding should the runway go away. But this is just our 5% share for the designing of the construction and the lighting. So we'll start this now, and then I think it's in 2022 we have plans to rehab it. That'd be like around $100,000 for that project. So we'll start planning for that in the future, but this is really just to start the design process and meet the MDOT grants that we're getting.
Mike, so if we go back up to the maintenance T-hangers,
Yes.
just have normal maintenance, okay? We're not putting in our budget any revenue for the tennis center, but we're also gonna be taking out expense for the tennis center.
Correct.
Could we look at how we can, if we're gonna dip down this year, right, because an odd year, we have to pay back township 160,000. Our revenues have gotta come in, we got 2 open units plus the east side of hangar 1 that we gotta get going.
Mhm.
Could we budget, T-hangers for more maintenance, paint, repair to some of the T-hangers that, you know, are south facing that may need some more work, or can we look at that project and see what we need and how much money we can actually put into it and start this year?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, some of the expense side accounts, there will be some savings that I think we could apply over there.
Because if we just keep just doing normal maintenance, it never draws attention to the fact that we need to do more than normal maintenance on our T-hangers.
Right.
And maybe this is a good time to budget for it, you know, and throw some money at it.
Sure.
And, but
Some-
I don't know, I mean,
No, I agree.
Daryl, I mean,
Right.
you're the pilot and you're the airport manager. I'm just looking at from a financial opportunity to do it. This may be the year to do it because we have to go dip. We're gonna lose revenue at the tennis center, but we're losing all the expense that we were gonna have to put into it, right? With the roof, the flat roof and some other things. And even if it's 50,000, another 50,
Right,
or
and
or 100,000, or do something to start putting together a plan to
Right.
attack the T-hangers. But I'm not a pilot. I don't know if it's a major issue. Maybe they're fine and we
No,
just
they
move
need-
on, but.
We're getting, and the other factor there that we've talked about in the past is, I mean, the north row, our alpha row of our hangars, I mean, I would say are getting towards the end of their lifespan. You know, it's a 40-year-old steel structure. So the motors are getting expensive and they need more maintenance just to keep them going. You know, in the future, that's something we should look at, is possibly building a new row and what that would cost in a bond and is the demand there and stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that I need to start looking at on my end as they continue to get older. I think there could be some cost savings, yes, if the tennis center should get offloaded or transferred over to recreation, rather. Yep.
We're on TV, man.
If the expenses were to be saved on that, you know, some could be transferred over. I don't know what that amount is. The other, you'll see further down this page, the bigger airport expense is a new tug, and that's always been a challenge for me because the airport doesn't really want to be in the FBO business. We'd love to have a tenant that's in the FBO business and can handle some of these expenses and make some revenues off of them. So, I mean, that tug is very expensive. I've been trying to find maybe a used one, but it's hard to find kind of a combination that would work for our airport that's used and in decent shape. So that's, you know, I would like to not buy a tug and put that 20 grand into T-hangers, but I think that's a service we have to provide for transient and current existing customers. So you'll see that tug in there as well on the last account, but we can definitely look at the maintenance on the T-hangers and see what we can squeak out of that.
I think we should also look at what are our other capital improvements that need to happen around the airport. You know, is there pavements that need to be, you know, resurfaced and things like that? So we have a handle on, you know, what are the next 5 years worth of improvements that need to happen, and then we can prioritize them and then decide, you know, which ones are the highest priority.
Sure. And I need to update the commission then too on our MDOT capital improvement plan, because that's what you're seeing in the taxiway A East construction and lighting project. There is that, you know, 5-year plan taking effect. So that's really the next pavement. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So that's the last big thing in the budget in terms of expense, and this is a large one, is a new airport tug for $21,800. We currently have a 20-year-old air horse, it's called. It's basically a modified lawnmower that a company makes. It cannot pull the biggest plane that we have here on the field that we've been servicing. We bought I will call it a tug that will work for that plane specifically, but it's not really a functional, daily, usable tool. A new air horse that still doesn't pull the biggest equipment that we get on the field is $18,000, which is, to me, astounding for a lawnmower that's been slightly modified with a hydraulic, but that's the cost and the way it is. There's new electric tugs that have been coming onto the market in the last 3 or 4 years. Best Tug is the name of a company. They have 2 tugs that I'm interested in, and the $21,800 one is basically their biggest one, you know, fairly top of the line, but it will pull any aircraft that we get here on the field. So, you know, we could get there's one for $18,000 that'll pull 90%, but for, you know, the big jets, unfortunately, the heavier aircraft who want the best service. So it's, to me, worth it to get the extra $3,000 and get the tug that'll pull everything. I'm really going to try to find a used one so we don't have to expense that and maybe see if there's a deal somewhere there. But some of the used tugs we see, I mean, it's either an air horse that can pull 90%, or it's a massive tug that's enclosed that's for pulling 737s off of Willow Run or Metro Airport that wouldn't be functional for pulling a Cessna 172 4-seat around our airport. So I think there's a potential for a used one. I'm going to do anything I can to, again, try to drop that number down to something a little more reasonable and hopefully put, as we just discussed, the remainder of that into T-hanger maintenance or a better capital improvement project. It's a purchase I'd rather not have to make. I'd rather have an FBO and not have to worry about it, but unfortunately it's just kind of the environment we're in right now. Our 2 employees would get trained and checked out on a new tug I purchased. So that'd be still in-house, but you do a call-out fee. Most of the bigger jets will call out. We have like a call-out fee, and our employees will come in and service that with the tug. Just needs to be arranged. So, I mean, if somebody shows up unannounced at midnight on a Friday, I mean, yeah, there's going to be no service for them here. But if they call us, you know, a reasonable, my normal is like a day or 2 ahead, that's a reasonable request for our employees to get out and do that. And we make a note normally in our airport advisory or the state directory, you know, call out 24 hours ahead or something along those lines, so at least it's advertised.
Mike, good report.
Yep.
Any questions for Mike on the financial or the budget? Hearing none, this was just a discussion item, so later on in our action items, we'll have a motion to either approve or deny the budget. Moving on to item number 6B is the Building 63 subdivide update.
We're starting to do our rough inspections. The walls have been studded out, and we're doing the inspections to close those up. The electrical's been run and activated. There are existing bathrooms in both facilities. If you recall, that was part of the reason why the expense is a little higher. So the lighting's on in there, and we're starting to gear up to recondition, refit the bathrooms for those 2. So I have opened up to the public both units for lease individually. We've had some interest there. I do not have a lease for you today. I'm hoping next meeting I should have at least 1 for you or 2. I'd like to get them both leased out. The tenant, I have not heard back from. They actually called me before the meeting, but I didn't take the call. But the party that was interested in a double unit. So I'll follow up with them, continue either conversation moving forward. But the build-out is coming along, so we pretty much have to close up the walls, waiting for inspection on that, refinish the bathrooms, and do final paint. And install some door components, and those 2 will be done. So I'd say, you know, just as we projected about mid-March, we should be going for final inspections and ready to lease those out.
Questions for Mike on Building 63? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6C, which is the tennis center update.
Just a brief update on this. The Recreation Commission is meeting next week, Thursday, to review and discuss the opportunity about moving into taking over the tennis center and turn it into a community recreation facility. I did, as I've had some contact, or I've sent out and kept you guys updated on conversations with the existing tenant. He paid me a visit today and actually delivered a letter to me midday stating that he will be going month to month and continuing on his lease as we offered him. So basically at this point he's going to continue month to month, and we're required to give him a 60-day notice was the agreement. I'm going to follow up with him in writing, just basically stating that we both understand, the arrangement, and I'll probably put a document together signing that just to kind of finalize it. So that kind of continues a little bit of revenue for us and gives the recreation facility or recreation department a little time to get set up on their end and give the tenant what I feel is adequate notice to move out after they've been there for a long time. So we want to make sure it's a smooth transition and try to treat everybody as fair as possible.
Questions for Mike on the tennis center? Hearing none, the next item 6D is the EPA complex update.
Just a brief update, as you saw in my email, I guess I'll update it publicly. The EPA complex has moved into its second phase of, I guess I'll call it GSA offloading, GSA acting as the broker. We've entered the 30-day window for the township, the airport, any other public entities, the county, the state, homeless shelter, subsidized, things like that, to put a bid in or express interest in the EPA complex. After that, I think I don't have the date with me off the top of my head. I believe that was in like early mid-March. Once that closes, then it goes to public auction. So that's kind of where we're at in the life cycle of GSA offloading that facility. So at this time, I don't believe, unless anything new's come up with the commission, but it sounds like the commission and the township are not interested in putting any interest in. We've looked at it in the background, and just nothing came to fruition or made sense that we were willing to commit to.
Like, if you hear anything new, let us know by way of email, I guess, if you hear.
Okay. Yep. I'll be checking with the representatives along, GSA in Chicago as the process continues, and try to keep everybody in the loop on dates and if there's anything going on in the background with submittals they may or may not have. I'm not sure how much detail they'll share with me on stuff they get, but I hope they'll at least make us aware of stuff going on in the background if they do have some interested parties.
Is there a local broker involved, or is it being handled out of Chicago?
Chicago. Yeah. I do think I believe they tap into possibly some local brokers as they get closer to the auction, to try to get a fair market value and that kind of a thing on the facility, but I don't know that for a fact.
Questions for Mike on EPA? Hearing none, we'll move on to our items number 7, which is our action items. 7A is our budget. We have a resolution in front of us that reads, the Groseville Airport Commerce Park hereby adopts a resolution of support for the proposed airfield/Commerce Park budget for fiscal year 2020 and 2021.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rathel, support by
Ed.
Mr. Van Oz. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item 7B is the Island Stowaway Pirates Cove land lease. We have a resolution in front of us that reads, based upon the recommendation from the Groseville Airport Commerce Park Manager, the Groseville Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby approves the sale, lease transfer, and new land lease with Pirates Cove Self-Storage, Inc. and the Groseville Municipal Airport. The additional land lease is pending environmental, county permits, and planning commission approval. Terms of the proposed lease agreement are listed in the history, purpose, and explanation section of the resolution. Mike, do you want to give a summary of the leases?
Sure. We have 3 leases in front of us today. You have 2 existing leases, one for Island Stowaway's land lease on the property that they did the improvements on. The secondary existing lease is a indoor storage facility in our Building 70 in the Commerce Park. That one, the building lease is for roughly 3,900 square feet. The existing land lease at 9081 Intrepid is for 113,262 square feet. That's at roughly 17 cents a square foot per year. The interested purchaser that everyone here has met is interested, has expressed interest in adding an additional 394,000 square feet to a new land lease at roughly 18 cents a square foot or $70,000 that you see there. So we're approving the transfer of the 2 existing leases and approving the additional land lease that comes to Grow Road that we've seen diagrams on and met with Brandon on. So that's what you have in front of you today, kind of as a package deal. If this is approved, the next step would basically be for Pirates Cove to sign the purchase agreement with Island Stowaway, and then at the same meeting, sit down at the table and execute the three new leases with the Township Airport Commerce Park Commission. The new land lease is really still moving forward, kind of the one that's pending. As Chairman read there, it's pending environmental survey. I've already initiated a phase one. We're meeting with the consultant this Friday, should this go forward. So I wanted to get that in motion already. It was for $2,200. The phase one is kind of going to be the easy one. It's moving into the phase two where they're going to do some borings and some other stuff. I would assume that it's going to be a little more tedious. So the consultant needs to learn a little more of the history and background on the facility and what some of the new tenant and my concerns are as well moving forward. So.
Mike, did you have a discussion with Brandon about the sublease that you and I discussed earlier today?
Correct. I'm going to review a couple. If you're all right, I'll just review a couple of the concerns and
Sure.
kind of.
Go ahead.
I think this lease is close enough that we can approve it pending a few items if the commission is comfortable, or we can make the changes here however you want to do them. In the email I included from our township attorney, he wanted to note the first three things. I think everybody's read that. The two things that he had concerns with, and I think are pretty straightforward. He was unaware that the parent company is a Canadian-based company. The only concern with that really is that we need a way to serve, if there ever needs to be a legal notice or proceeding or something, we need a proper way to serve that entity. Talking to Brandon and Mr. Assorti, I think this is easily resolved by just putting a clause in there saying, should there ever be a legal notice needed, we'll serve Pirates Cove at the existing address on Intrepid or an address, whatever the address agreed to is. So I think that just needs to be clarified in there. I think that's pretty minor, but we can add that in there because it's to the attorney's concerned with it. The second one is in paragraph 15, they're asking us to indemnify them. According to the township attorney, under Michigan law, a township can't indemnify another party. So I've asked him to cite that. I mean, if it's a cut and dry law, then obviously we can't have that in the lease, and Brandon's understanding and accepting of that. So we'll look at that moving forward. The sublease clause that's in those, speaking with Mr. Chair, the one request he had, and I don't think either party has an issue with moving forward. Brandon, please correct me anytime if we're not on the same page. Is that I don't think they ever will, but should the other party or tenant wish to sublease any portion of that, and they sublease it at a higher rate, we as the Township Airport Commerce Park are entitled to a portion, 50% split, whatever we want to determine. I think 50% is fine of the difference. So if we're charging 18 cents a square foot and he charges $1 for half the lot and gets it, obviously we're going to want a share of that. I don't think that the tenant's ever going to want to sublease that, because obviously then they're giving up their right to some revenue and stuff. But it is in there too. Obviously they have to have approval by us for any portion greater than like a 50% sublet.
And Mike, my also concern was not just subletting a part of it. If they were, let's say for some reason, they wanted to get out of the business and they found somebody to take it over, and they're going to lease it to them for twice what they're leasing it from us, we want to share in that upswing on that. So a 50% split is fine with me.
Okay. I think we can add that in there. And again, if they were to find an interested party to lease the entire facility, that has to come to us for approval per the lease anyways. So we would have control over that negotiation at that situation. But if we want to put 50% in there up front, I think that's fine. And then the other concern is still the word I think we've figured out a way to simplify this, is still in paragraph 31. There's the word goodwill in there, and there's multiple interpretations of the word goodwill. There's fair market value, and then there's forward earnings, revenue potentials. I think that's probably been the hardest thing to work out with the two attorneys, is really just putting a general understanding into legal terms is sometimes not the easiest thing. But I know Mr. Chair and maybe one or two others had some concerns with that word goodwill, and Brandon and I have basically negotiated that the understanding that needs to get put in writing in there is basically that goodwill will mean an appraised value of the building, not forward earnings, but a fair market value of the improvements to the property. So, you know, I'm just going to throw out a number. If he builds it for $100,000 and goes to sell it, it may be worth $250,000 on an appraisal at that point. That's what the tenant is requesting, or potential tenant's requesting for goodwill. So in my mind, an arrangement in there that basically says, you know, we as the owner will get an appraisal, the tenant will get an appraisal, and then we'll either come to an agreement, and if we cannot, then a third appraisal will be done, you know, through a third party, and either the meeting of the three or the third appraisal is the final number. So I think that's a reasonable kind of line to agree to on that goodwill line. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Okay, go ahead. You want to come up to the podium or?
Yeah, you might as well. Come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Brandon Vargo. I'm here representing Pirates Cove, who is hopefully going to lease out the 8 acres we are referencing. With the specific goodwill terminology we are talking about, I did not get a chance to talk to my attorney about that, as we were not ever given the problems beforehand. You know, I talked to Mike about it, but I never actually got a chance to deal with the attorney on that and what we think the proper terminology is. I think me and Mike have a general agreement upon that, but I still need to work out the actual terminology going forward that I'm okay with. You know, as we had looked up the definition of goodwill, so I could better grasp stating what it was, and there's multiple definitions of it in general. So yeah, I think we do need to elaborate better on it. I just don't have the exact terminology today for that. So we would have to approve of that after. So we would have to approve the lease, and then, you know, that would be unfortunately something after we'd have to discuss, or approve, I guess, the terminology.
So I have a question on
Yeah.
that. So if we look at the owner shall compensate the tenant for the appraised value of all improvements to the leased premises and the appraised value of the tenant's business, period. What is good? You have a business that is all encompassed of your accounts and your profitability and, you know, your EBITDA and all the things that
Correct.
we measure the value of business,
Goodwill
right?
is a legal term is the problem, and you know, me and you and everybody else here has one way of looking at it, and I agree with what you're saying. However, my attorney may feel strongly differently that the word goodwill has to be in there, and I need to be on the same page with him going forward, as well as your attorney.
It makes no sense, and I do a lot of M&As.
Correct.
I mean, I haven't used goodwill in years and years.
I get it.
You have the value of a business, which includes, you know,
Correct.
your
And
capital,
it would be
your
a
cash,
business assessment as well, that we would be having going forward. It's, however, not something that Tom brought up, or Mr. Assorti brought up as a problem when he looked at the agreement. So it's something I still have to discuss with my attorney.
That was something I
can't-
brought up to Mike.
Correct,
this
correct. Which
afternoon.
is why
So,
he brought it up to me beforehand,
understood.
but I didn't have a chance to discuss it with him. That's
well,
And I
all.
think you could either delete the word goodwill and basically leave the sentence that you're saying, or we can leave, if his attorney needs the word goodwill in there, but define what we're saying by
but
goodwill.
a goodwill is no more, if you have the value of your business, this is what your business is worth. It isn't worth any more because you say, well, and I want goodwill. Well,
I understand.
you
I
have the
completely
value of your
understand.
business,
It is still
right?
the value of your business.
So,
I get it 100%.
So anyway,
Yeah,
that's,
I understand. I mean, Brandon's got to deal with his attorney, who's the one
Yep.
that drafted this. So my recommendation is we approve the lease the way we want it to read, and if that isn't satisfactory with your attorney, we'll
Correct.
see you at the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Mike, I also had that one change on the new facility where I wanted the street name changed from Meridian to
Correct.
Midway. Would you make sure that that gets changed?
Yep.
And Brandon,
Got that
did
on the
you
notes.
see that?
It just said Meridian instead of the word Midway for the buildings to be
It,
along.
it's on page 6 under item 9C. It makes reference to the storage will be screened from Grow and Meridian, and I want the word Meridian changed to Midway, because that's the street that this fronts on.
You know, the very historic aircraft carrier and one of the major streets in our Commerce Park that everyone will be looking at, that one. Yep. Mhm.
And Mike, one other thing I meant to mention to you today, is that since the lease is with a Canadian company, I'd like it to be pointed out, it's probably obvious, but I'd like it to be in here that, the lease payments will be made in US funds.
Sure.
I'm assuming that, but,
Correct.
I'm dealing with the, Gordie Howe Bridge project right now, and funds are coming in Canadian dollars.
They're 40%
catch.
short.
Catch, I was going for Bitcoin, but US dollars are, okay, that's,
Hey, can we back up for 1 minute?
Sure.
Okay, just going back to the goodwill, I hate to beat this to death, but so we're saying the tenant's business, including goodwill. Okay, so goodwill is a part of the value of the business. Can we define beforehand how this business is going to be valued in this event?
Can we define it?
So,
Can we define it in what form? Or I
so,
guess
so what we're saying here is we're gonna pay. We would pay back the value of
Yeah.
the appraised value
Correct.
of the leased properties, and then it's the appraised value of the tenant's business.
Okay.
So,
well,
what is
well,
the business? I mean, so is that what you could sell your business for?
yeah, it would be. I guess it would all be different depending on what day it is that it would be sold. If it's a year down the road and we don't have a business yet, technically I just got buildings. The business value is completely different than 10 years down the road.
Yeah, I'm just curious how that would be determined, though. I mean, so if something were to happen and all of a sudden that land can't be used for any
Correct.
sort of business, I
Yeah,
mean, just
understood.
doomsday scenario, then I mean the business really wouldn't be worth anything because you can't use it. So it would be
Understood.
basically just the value of the improvements at that point.
I guess it depends. It depends on what happened to make the land not be valuable anymore. And in any of these instances where we would be getting reimbursed, it would be more or less it being taken away from us. So you wouldn't be able to sell it off anyways and make the money back that you would have to pay us. It would be
Yeah, if there's an economic-
obsolete no matter what.
If there's an economic downturn or something, that's a different factor.
Correct.
We're talking if the owner were to, or federal government were to reclaim the property, that's when this really kicks in, where they need to be reimbursed. And I mean, I understand that completely. What I think we are not in favor of is obviously forward earnings. I know at one point it was like they wanted to be reimbursed, 10 years forward earnings. That's something I'm not in favor of. But I mean, a fair market value for the improvements in the business is understandable.
And you bring up a really good point, and you can get into this about, how do you value the business, right? Is it 3x, 4x, 5? Is it
Right.
these things?
And-
We have a pretty good indicator of what the value of these businesses are right now because you're buying one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a pretty good indicator with all of them that I've bought as
so
well. Yeah.
I think that, I think you can't define it exactly how it's going to be valued.
Correct. Which is why
Because at the time
goodwill
of the
is in there.
valuation, there's going to be comps that you're going to be able to look at and see,
Yep.
and
Yep. Yeah, and I could spend $5 million over there, and the business value be $2.2 million, depending on the year and the economy. There's no saying, but that's why the terminology of goodwill is in there, because it's kind of a flux statement where it's depending on.
But the
it,
value
and
of your
I
business is
get it.
flux. So goodwill
Correct.
is like
It's-
I mean,
it's the
you're
same
turning
thing.
one. I don't care if it's in there because it means nothing.
It's
The
yeah,
value
I
of your
think it's-
business is the value of your business
I agree.
with everything that you have, okay?
Correct.
So you don't have the value of your business and then separate outside of that bubble, goodwill that adds more on value of the business
Correct,
plus.
and it wouldn't, and the
Okay.
contract isn't saying that, which is why I don't think
Right.
Mr. Assorti
So-
had a problem with it, because it's not saying we're adding an additional revenue that
It's
doesn't
redundancy.
exist.
It's redundancy in a lease, in my opinion, and I think that we kind of just said we just take it out and, the value of your business.
But I think to know what the methodology would be.
Correct, and I think we had
Yeah.
discussed the business appraisal and getting 3 different business appraisals and then going with the median one, or was some form
And that's what I'm looking
like
for.
that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, perfect. Yep. Nope.
You read the motion, but no one made the motion.
Okay.
Can you read it with the changes or the?
Yes, I will. The resolution reads, based upon the recommendation from the Grosville Airport Commerce Park Manager, the Grosville Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby approves the sale, lease transfer, and new land lease with Pirates Cove Self-Storage, Inc. and the Grosville Municipal Airport with the additional changes. That is that the subletting paragraph in all three of the leases state that if the property is to be sublet in whole at a cost, at a rate higher than what the tenant is paying, that the difference be split between the tenant and the airport commission. That goodwill either be removed or a definition be added. And on page 6, item 9 of the new property lease, that the word Meridian Road be changed to Midway. And I'm going to add this, that all exhibits be attached with the correct identification. So there's a couple places where the exhibit's blank, and I guess the pages were too big to put in the lease. So the final lease needs to have all the exhibits marked correctly and attached.
Correct, they will. I'm sorry. The attachments are in 11 by 17 format, and if I put that into your packet like that, it turns all the pages into 11 by 17 and makes it hard to read because it shrinks it. So.
Yeah, we're just approving it. We don't want to actually see everything that's in it.
Well, no, it's included in your
You know,
packet.
you
It's
gotta
the last-
pass it first before you know what's in it.
It's the last 3 pages of your packet are the 11 by 17 attachments
Oh,
to the
okay.
leases.
So-
In the last item, that all rental payments are due and paid in U.S. funds.
Yes.
Suggestion that we base our approval on final approval and final recommendation and approval of the township attorney. I see it in here in the history and purpose. I think it should be in the motion.
That's fine. I'm okay with adding that, subject to the township attorney approval.
Make that motion.
So I do have one question where it says, the Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby approves the sale, lease transfer, and new land lease with Pirates Cove Self-Storage and the Grosville Municipal Airport. We're not selling anything.
We're approving the sale from Island Stove.
But it doesn't say that in here.
It says we're approving the sale.
Well, we're approves the sale, lease transfer with Pirates Cove and the Grosville Airport. Doesn't say anything about we're approving the sale of a,
You can say the sale and transfer from Island Stowaway to Pirates.
I mean, am I just kinda wordsmithing this or,
It's fine. We can add that too.
I don't wanna.
Are you okay with that?
Have Brandon come back and say, oh man, you just sold me the whole thing here. It's like,
Ted, are you okay with that change?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Van Oz,
second.
support by Mr. Rathel. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Okay, work out those details and let the record reflect that Mr. Hornby abstained. Moving on to item number 8, our subcommittee reports. We have none tonight. Discussion items. Anyone have any discussion items? Mr. Rathel?
We have 3 leases that we have to approve. Did we just approve all 3 of them?
Yes.
Transfer and the new lease, yeah. The transfer, I included the 2 existing leases. That's the transfer, and then the new lease, the new land lease.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any discussion items?
Nope.
Hearing none, move on to the chairman's report.
Landscaping.
Um,
You're working with him, right, on that? Are you working with him
Okay.
on that?
Well, it's
Yeah.
taking a back seat because
Okay,
of this land lease deal, so we got to move it back up to the top of the list, though.
Right.
We have plenty of time with the environmental, I'm sure.
We got it back today. It's all clean. Go over there and start.
Yeah, I balled it.
Our next item, which is public comment. Brandon, any public comment? Oh, I didn't even see you.
We had somebody in the audience.
Well,
there,
I
did
couldn't
ya?
see you.
My name is Andrew Huber. I'm at 9350 Lakewood. I am requesting, my business is requesting land the parking lot adjacent to Grow and Meridian for bulk material storage for the term May through October. That is because of the bridge closure. We're gonna have a huge logistical issue going all the way around, paying double going through the toll bridge. And we're seeking approximately 1,000 square feet. That is the parking lot right there. We're pretty open
Sorry,
as to.
where are you at again?
That's Meridian and Grow Road intersection. That's the enclosed parking lot that has the black aluminum fence all the way around it. It's on the east side of our existing
Where the
storage.
bus is right now?
Yes, it's on the east side of our existing storage facility.
We're very open to anywhere in that parking lot that we can store our bulk material. We do have plans, if it is approved, to put bins to contain our bulk material. Our bin will be made of concrete blocks. They're called bin blocks or also mafia blocks. We're estimating about 30, 35-ish, somewhere in there. They're 2x2x6.
What's your business name? I'm sorry.
AJ's Lawn Care and Snow Removal, LLC. We're at 2250 Vreeland currently. That's where our yard is at. We generally take the free bridge, but that's planned to be closed this year.
And I guess I'll give a little background. Mr. Huber and I have had discussions in the past on looking at some storage yards. He was interested in the one that Island Roots ended up going into. If you recall, they were an existing tenant in our warehouse space that we wanted to shift out of that warehouse space to open it up. So they moved into the yard that he was interested in. Unfortunately, at that time, there just really are not any other locations available for outdoor storage. I told him that based on prior commission discussions, we looked at that one yard that's fenced in on the north side of Building 70. We decided to not want to be a storage yard, if you call that. We had a proposal for a shipping container and outdoor storage in there. And being in the middle of the Commerce Park, we decided we did not want that to be a storage yard. In my discussions with Mr. Huber, that location, I was not, I guess I'll preface this by saying I was not aware it was a temporary setup. I think maybe we miscommunicated that. I was understanding it to be a longer term setup. I mean, that fenced in area is kind of a weird spot. It's not secure. There's fences on both sides, but the one has to remain open for all of our new tenants in Building 63. The other one could stay closed, but they do move some things in and out of our storage facility, trailers, boats, RVs, into that area of the parking lot to kind of pivot it around and make space for moving vehicles and stuff, which that really dies off in the springtime, isn't necessarily intensive in the summer. But that parking lot, it has a berm on the east side, but is also very visible from Grow Road. So my opinion was, long-term storage, I did not think that was the place for it. Unfortunately, we don't have any other fenced-in secure yards in our facility that are well hidden to do that. But I invited him to come forward with a proposal to, in some areas that he was thinking and what kind of an operation it was, and give you guys a little bit of background.
What are you gonna store on the site?
Mulch.
Just mulch, that's all you're gonna store?
And we're gonna store a piece of equipment to load it, a skid steer, cat skid steer, probably 2014 or newer.
And how much property do you need?
I'm budgeting 1,000 square feet. I'd like to have about 200 yards of mulch in there. The plan is I wrote the dimensions on the back of my paper. I'm planning 6 feet high, since they are 2x2x6, they are 2 feet tall, 3 blocks stacked high, 30 feet in length, 24 in width.
Mr. Chair, if I may say one more thing, I do think that there's going to be a need for operations like this, but I think I'll say that I think it needs to be a township-wide conversation, not necessarily just with the airport and Commerce Park. Does the township want to make available a location for storage of this type of material, for construction staging? I mean, we have our own needs for water main improvements, other capital improvement projects that need staging and to get things onto the island. So I think this is, if the county has been, obviously, as you guys have seen all over on their dates on when or how long the bridge is actually going to be closed for. It clearly is going to close for some time. We just don't know, fully when and where, but I think this is going to be, a need moving forward. I don't know if the commission should hit it head on or wants to comment on it, or if this should be, maybe between us and the township and looking at what we need to do to make sure that the tenants or residents are properly getting services to their homes and making things feasible.
I am not in favor of this location, but I am in favor of seeing if there's some other, as you just mentioned, he's not gonna be the only one that's gonna have an issue.
Sure.
So if there's some kind of plan we can put into place that we can help out the local businesses here for that period of time, I'm all for it, in the right location.
Right. And I think the agreements are gonna have to be solid, you know, I mean, we don't want debris left behind, construction material left behind. I mean, it's gonna have to be, whether it's on our property or somewhere else in the township. I mean, I don't know if the airport and Commerce Park's the right place to do that, but I think we do need to look at this in, as a whole.
Well, I would say we would require some kind of deposit that, you know, if they were just to abandon the property, we'd have to have a deposit to clean it up. But, I mean, that's details that we can work out.
Yep.
We are running out of time because frost laws are gonna be going into effect, so we won't be able to get material here. And the bridge, the date that I have is May 1st.
That's when you need to have your material.
That's the date that the
on
bridge
site.
is closed, is the date that I have.
The most recent date that we've gotten from the county. I don't know if, Mr. Treasurer, if the township has heard otherwise, but
I've heard nothing official.
So let me ask Mike, on the area he's proposing, would that interfere with any of the traffic and parking for our new units?
depends on the existing operations of the units. No, it brings a lot more people back into that area. But if we were to do something like a golf simulator, that would be our overflow parking. You know, it depends on the use of the facility and the demand. You know, so that it could, if we were to do, for example, the golf simulator, you know, they're gonna have overflow parking for parties and things like that, and that was a lot I was planning on utilizing. There's still some room between the warehouses where we could easily mark out another bank. It's just a question of how many people are they really gonna have at any given time. I couldn't tell you, but I would tell you that if there is a demand where it's gonna bring people down to a unit, that would be the overflow parking
But
area.
you're just talking about when the bridge is closed.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean, this isn't like forever. I mean,
right,
this
and I
is
didn't
sort of-
understand that.
And
part
that's-
of it.
and that's why we
He
said
just has, like,
mid-October.
he wants to sell mulch on the island, and you can't get it over the bridge.
Right,
Correct.
and
So,
the other thing, you know,
that's not secure there.
It's mulch. It's gonna be, you know, we'll probably do our own type of securement. We're gonna have our skid steer there in front of the mulch.
So why don't we do something, in the lot between, Brandon's new company and, the Sled Hill on that north lot there?
the open field you're talking about?
That was always scheduled to
That'd
be,
probably have to do a curb cut or two or a ramp or something, but, I mean, that can be up
Do
to their
what?
improvements. A curb cut or a ramp for a vehicle to pull into. If you're gonna utilize the field, they're gonna need to get a car back up in there, right?
Is it all curbed right there? Mike?
It's curbed like the
No,
south
it's
half,
not
but
curb.
the north half's not, you're right? Like
So,
we're towards the
I
hill.
mean, I think that'd be a perfect location. Cause way in the back there, he can come right off of Meridian, drive right back. He's on the north side, you know what I'm talking about, that lot back there?
That's, yeah, there's not a paved area there. I mean, you're gonna be driving a skid steer, tearing up the grass and trying to get a vehicle stuck in there in the rain, and logistics wise, that's
So
gonna
now
be
you're saying it has
difficult.
to be on concrete, and if you're saying it on concrete, then we have no place.
I'd prefer a concrete base.
Yeah. He's gonna want
Because
concrete
you're
for
gonna
its
want
own
it cleaned up.
operation.
You're gonna, I mean, fortunately, our mulch isn't dyed, so if we put it on a brand new concrete driveway, it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
leach.
stain that concrete driveway. We can take it up and
Yeah, but that's not the case as I see it with you just talking about this. We don't have just unused concrete that I can see that you just like dump in and use.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, the one thing that could be a potential for, cause it's such a small area too, right? This isn't something like we're gonna build a yard for a larger development. You know, looking at, the problem is the existing tenants with yards are landscaping companies or potentially his competition, so they're not gonna wanna sublease it, but if you go into somewhere like the boat storage yard down Grow Road, and maybe he'd be willing to lease a portion of the yard for that type of use that already has gravel, parking lot and improvements on it, that I think would be a better case scenario here, but you know, going into that field, yeah, he's gonna need some structure based, and then I think on our end, we're gonna need to set up, I mean, if we open that door and we've got one person operating, A, what are we gonna charge, but be, I mean, you're gonna have more people coming to you for
What,
random
what about on
uses.
the north side of, building 61, 62, up by
That's in between the two buildings, right?
west side? Closer
A
to
fenced-in parking lot there, I mean, that goes with the building, so if you were to lease that building out, on a temporary basis.
Well, I know,
it might-
but
yeah,
we're only talking, this isn't a permanent thing, right?
Sure.
I get what we're saying.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah, temporary basis, that lot could be a potential, I mean, as long as you guys don't mind that sitting right on Grow Road, with the bin blocks
no,
and all
but
that
you
stuff.
can't see it. You can't see it from Grill Road.
That side fenced-in lot?
Behind building 61.
You don't have a map that we can look at, do you?
I have like an aerial, I could pull up an aerial on Google Maps on here, yeah.
You know, and I agree with what Ron's saying too, but my feeling is for 1,000 square feet for May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. Oh, wait a minute. Hopefully the bridge is gonna be open by then. Don't even need mulch in the winter. I mean, my personal feeling is let's try to help the guy out, but, it's not like it's extra revenue, and somebody's gonna love the fact that they're gonna get mulch and not have to charge, you know, pay.
It sounds like we now have a reason to sublease.
Yeah, talk to him. I mean, he's got all our land now. I mean, it's,
And we get half of whatever he gets over.
This is not what I pull up. I think the internet might not be working on me here, so I might be able to pull up an aerial. He's
just
got
wondering if
one
I
on
got
his
enough
phone.
place in my.
Put your phone, I mean,
my
you put your phone on
yard.
there, I guess we'll see if it'll pick it up.
Some mulch.
Some free mulch.
You can store mulch. You get what's left over.
So here's Grow Road, here's the lot he's proposing, that's the Meridians over here. So we're at that, here's the berm, here's the intersection Meridian and Grow. You know, like we said, this would be the overflow parking if a business ever developed in here that needed a lot of it. These guys do pull some, RVs and that kind of stuff in and out of there. Are you proposing, there's this fenced-in lot on the west side of the building, that's, you know,
No, just like right
right
up.
here?
Yeah, just over a little bit, the other.
To the east a little bit there, Mike.
In between these buildings?
Yeah, but, yeah, to the, right in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 14-foot door here and then the 14-foot door there, so if you were clear of those two, you could potentially do that. That'd be in between the buildings.
I don't think that, my feeling is that we're not gonna do the 2 units to the single business of what we were talking about, Mike.
Okay.
Because, I had a conversation with him. So, you guys know where the bus is that Mike has parked out there for the last year and a half? I don't know whose it is, but it's there.
It's an existing tenants that should be gone this week.
So right in that area is what was your name again?
Andrew.
The one, I guess, the one comment, I mean, we could, this lot is still gravel, I mean, you could use a compacted asphalt milling base, right?
We're on millings now, so.
So, I mean, we filled in that lot that we didn't want a storage yard, they could easily use the north half of that, you know, need some weed whack and then, maybe some more millings that we already have and compact those down and give them an area in that fenced-in yard and do that out of. I mean, that'd be,
How many bends?
How many?
Bends,
I'm thinking, I estimated roughly 30 blocks. They're 2 by 2 by.
How many bends does that make?
That's one. That's one bin.
Well, how many do you need?
One bin.
Just do it. I mean, for, how much you gonna pay us?
$1 a month. How much do you want?
I like you, man. Because I was at $2,500, so,
meet in the middle.
so, I mean,
Mike can
just,
negotiate
my,
at
my,
least.
my personal feeling is just figure it out and make it happen, and I don't have a problem with it.
And I guess that's, the question moving forward is do we wanna start opening that yard up for temporary things while the bridge is open?
You know what?
Obviously, I mean, if that's the intent moving forward, that's fine. I just wanna make sure the commission's all on the same page.
Let's block out the whole, could you go back to that again? go, the whole, north side of, no, go forward, go,
That existing lot where
so
Monkey
that,
Business is.
that lot right there.
This one or this one?
Yep, the one you're at, just stay there,
Left, yeah.
and just take all that
The north side.
and carve out 10 spots, advertise to people, say, you know what, landscapers, you wanna bring material in? There you go, man, you can, it's how much it costs.
We want a definite start date and end date on any kind
Oh,
of
of
lease,
course, yeah, for
obviously.
sure.
Anybody have any objection to that? No objections? Okay,
Right, ma'am?
Mike,
Thank
you
you.
can, Mike,
Terms and.
yeah, negotiate terms, send those to us by email.
Somewhere between $2,500 and $1.
In make sure you have an aerial with it marked on some kind of map so we understand exactly where that's gonna go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for coming, man. Aren't you a fireman here?
Somebody actually mentioned to bring that up, but I didn't bring it up.
You know, that's a good thing. You can bring that up.
Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Rachel, supported by Mr. Tova to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries.